Hi, first graders. Happy Tuesday. I have a joke for you today, and I think that it is especially appropriate because we are going to be doing a story later today in this lesson. So, my joke for you is, where do library books go to sleep? Under their covers. Get it? Because books have covers. All right, let's go on to our message for the day. Dear first graders, today is Tuesday. I hope you are all checking Seesaw if you are able. There are lots of activities posted every day to help you practice first grade skills. Keep working hard. Have a terrific Tuesday. Love, Mrs. Baker. Remember to go on Seesaw and correct the mistakes in this note. Today we are going to be reading a nonfiction story called Slugs and Snails. Let's take a look at the front cover first. What do you notice about the pictures on the cover? Are those real pictures, or did somebody draw or paint them? The title of this book is Slugs and Snails. It was written by Robin Green, and the photographs were taken by Kathy Atkinson and Denzi Klein. Some of you might already know about slugs and snails. I want you to take a minute now to think about what you already know about slugs and snails. Thinking about what you already know about slugs and snails, make a prediction for what we might read about and learn today. Let's read the back cover now to see if we can find out what kind of information we will learn in this book. What can float on a bed of bubbles or hang from a thread of slime? Find the answers in this fun and informative look at the amazing world of slugs and snails. Do you remember the prediction you made looking at the front cover? After reading the questions on the back here, do you think you need to change your prediction at all? What is your new prediction? You might notice when you read nonfiction texts that they oftentimes have contents pages. These pages have words that tell about what you will read about in the book, and they tell you what page you can find those things on. So if I look at page 4, I will read about gastropods. Is that a new word to you, first graders? I think we'll have to read the book and see if there are any clues to tell us what that word means. If we go to page 6, we will learn about snails, and we'll learn about land snails and water snails. It tells what page we'll find each of those. And then it talks about slugs, land slugs and sea slugs. First graders, if I wanted to read about sea slugs, what page would I visit? If I wanted to read about land snails, what page would I visit? You'll notice at the bottom it says index on page 24. Do you remember what an index is, first graders? An index lists lots of words that you might look up after reading the book, or words that you might want to know more about. Let's say I want to learn more about food. I could go to pages 8 through 9 or 18 through 19 to learn about food in this book. So the index tells you where you might find different things in the story. Now before we read, we are going to take a look at the pictures in the book, and I want you to think about ways that the slug and the snails are all alike or different. Things you can tell already without reading any words. Just things that you can look at and figure out by looking at pictures. What are you noticing in these pictures? Now, we talked about the contents page as being a nonfiction text feature, but I'm noticing some other nonfiction text features that we've talked about this year. I've seen captions for the pictures, and I've noticed on a couple of these pages, I'll see if I can come to another page here. I'll keep doing a little picture walk. Of course, the pictures are nonfiction text features. They help us better understand. I'll have to go back. Earlier in the book, I noticed a diagram. Here's a picture, and it points to different things. It has labels for the picture, and it helps us better understand. It looks like the body of this snail. So we have this diagram here, the picture that helps us better understand something. And there are labels, and there are also the captions to the pictures. So there are all kinds of different text features in this story. Another thing you might find a lot in nonfiction texts are new and unfamiliar words. We kind of talked about that gastropod word, and we're going to have to read to use some of our strategies to figure out what that means. Do you remember what some of the strategies are that we've used before this year? If we don't know how to say a word, we can sound it out. We could make it into make smaller chunks out of the word. If we don't know what a word means, what can we do? We can look at the pictures to help us understand. We might have to read more of the text, and maybe some of the other words on the page can help us understand what the word means. Those are all strategies that we use. Are you ready to read now, first graders? Gastropods. Do you see that heading there, first graders? That means we are going to be reading about gastropods. All slugs and snails are animals without backbones. They are called gastropods. They have soft bodies and use special muscles underneath to move themselves along. Here's a common snail moving along a mossy bank. Slug, and it has a foot, a breathing hole, and tentacles. And then here's a snail. It says a foot with muscles for moving along. Pod means foot. The snail's stomach is inside its shell. Gastro means stomach. If gastro means stomach and pod means foot, gastropod. Did we just figure out what that word means? We sure did. Here we have a rainforest snail, a pond snail, and a sea slug. Some gastropods live on land, and some live in fresh water, but most live in the sea. Snails. All gastropods with shells are called snails. This is a bubble raft snail that lives in the sea. It hangs from a raft of bubbles on the surface of the water. Well, that's kind of interesting. Here's a land snail. The soft part of a land snail has a head in the front, a foot underneath, and the rest of the body is inside the shell. And we can see all kinds of different parts of the snail there. Take a look at those labels. Does the snail have some body parts that are the same as you? There are a few that are the same. A snail's tongue is like a strap covered with thousands of tiny teeth. It's called a radula. Snails use the radula for scraping up food and tearing it to pieces. Some land snails feed on fungi, and some feed on other plants. A few feed on small creatures in their environment. Here's a plant-eating snail, and slugs feeding on puffy balls, which are the fungi. Land snails travel by making the foot muscles ripple. As they move, they put down slime from the front end. This slime helps the foot glide along. Ugh. I don't know how I feel about that slime. Most land snails have both male and female sex organs, but it still takes 2 snails to mate and produce eggs. After 2 land snails mate, they lay eggs through an opening in the head. The eggs are usually laid in a safe, damp place. Tiny snails hatch from eggs. As the snails grow, their shells grow too. Land snails spend most of their days in damp, dark places. They come out to feed at night or when it rains. Most land snails can pull their heads right inside their shells when they sense danger. That's interesting. When the weather becomes too dry, most land snails retreat into their shells and stay inside until the weather gets damp again. So they really use that shell for protection from many different things, either if they're in danger or if it's too dry for them. Now, our heading says water snails. So we're not talking about land snails anymore. We're talking about water snails. There are many thousands of different kinds of water snails with shells of different shapes, sizes, and colors. A pond snail moving on the glass of an aquarium, a cowrie moving in the sea, and a bubble shell on the seabed. Snails that live in the sea are called marine snails. Many of the seashells found on the beach are the empty shells of marine snails. That's very interesting. Here's an abalone and a triton shell. Now we're reading about slugs. Slugs do not have shells. A slug's body is similar to the soft body of a snail. This slug eats tiny fungi. Land slugs. The heading changed, so now we're reading about something different. Most land slugs eat plants. Some feed on toadstools and other kinds of fungi. Others eat dead plants and animal droppings. So here's a slug feeding on bird droppings. And here's a slug eating plants. Like most snails, slugs can be both male and female. 2 slugs mate to produce eggs. Slugs also lay their eggs in a well-sheltered place. When the eggs are ready to hatch, tiny slugs crawl out fully formed. But since they don't have a shell, they don't have to worry about the shell growing with them. Sea slugs. Many different kinds of slugs live in the sea. Their shapes and colors are wonderful. A brilliantly colored sea slug from Great Barrier Reef. That is a beautiful slug. Here's a sea slug on a rock and a sea slug moving in the water. It's hard to say fast. Sea slug. And we're at the index page. That's the end of our book. I hope you learned something new. There's an activity on Seesaw that you can do about snails. And then there are also some questions coming up right now that you can talk about with somebody at home. See you later, first graders.